Dunbar, with the Black Timeline. Thomas Jefferson, a founding father, the face of the Declaration of Independence and enslaver. All men are created equal, but enslaved more than 600 African Americans throughout his life, the most out of the other 11 presidents who were enslavers. July 4th, 1776, the Declaration of Independence is adopted, declaring that the 13 American colonies are free from British rule. But will African Americans benefit? In 1778, Jefferson's law proposal led to the banning of slave importation in Virginia. As president, Jefferson led the effort to make the Atlantic slave trade illegal, signing a federal law that passed Congress in 1807 and went into effect in 1808. In 1779, Jefferson supported gradual emancipation, believing that releasing unprepared enslaved African Americans with no place to go and no way to support themselves would not end well. As a lawyer, Jefferson defended African Americans and whites. In his book, Jefferson analyzes the nature of African Americans. He stated that blacks lacked forethought, intelligence, tenderness, grief, imagination, and beauty, that they had poor taste, smelled bad, and were incapable of producing artistry or poetry, but conceded that they were the moral equals of others. Jefferson believed that the bonds of love for blacks were weaker than those for whites. The Haitian Revolution. After Toussaint Louverture became Governor General of Haiti following the Haitian Slave Revolt of 1801, Jefferson supported French plans to reclaim the island. Jefferson and Southern enslavers feared that the Haitian Revolt would encourage a similar rebellion in their territory. Jefferson stated, "If something is not done in soon, we shall be the murderers of our own children." By 1802, when Jefferson learned that France was planning to take the Louisiana Territory and New Orleans from the Spanish, Jefferson declared the neutrality of the U.S. in the French and Caribbean conflict. Jefferson refused assistance to the French and allowed smuggled goods and weapons to reach Haiti, indirectly supporting the Haitian Revolution. In 1803, Haiti defeated the French, and Jefferson made the Louisiana Purchase. Haitians declared independence in 1804. European nations refused to recognize Haiti as an independent nation. Jefferson stated that he had never seen blacks do well in governing themselves and thought they could not without the help of whites. Monticello. At age 24, Jefferson inherited 5,000 acres of land and 52 enslaved African Americans from his father. Jefferson inherited 2 plantations, 11,000 acres, and 135 more enslaved African Americans through his marriage and inheritance from his father-in-law. Sally Hemings was one of the enslaved. After the death of his wife Martha, Jefferson had a long-term sexual relationship with Sally Hemings. Sally Hemings. Sally's father was John Wells, her and her mother's enslaver. John Wells' daughter, Martha Wells, married Thomas Jefferson. Sally was Martha's half-sister. The sexual relationship with Sally started around the age of 14, Jefferson 44. It was illegal for an enslaved female to refuse sexual demands, of course. According to Sally's son Madison, Sally became pregnant by Jefferson in Paris. She was about 16 at the time. DNA tests proved that at least one son, Eston, is of the Jefferson bloodline. Jefferson is believed to be the father of all 6 of Sally's children. Jefferson encouraged the enslaved at Monticello to marry. The enslaved could not marry legally in Virginia. Jefferson recorded slave births in his farm book, but no father is recorded for Sally's children. Many of the enslaved practiced the common law marriages, but no partnership of Sally is recorded in the records. According to her son Madison, Sally's children were permitted to stay about the great house and only required to do such light work as going on errands. The 1662 Virginia slave law stated that children born to an enslaved mother were considered slaves. The slave status of a child followed that of the mother. Sally Hemings and all of her children were legally slaves, even though the fathers were the white enslavers and the children were of majority white ancestry. At the age of 24, Sally's son Beverly ran away from Monticello and was not pursued. His sister Harriet also ran away in the same year and was not pursued. Sally Hemings remained enslaved in Jefferson's house until his death. Jefferson was bankrupt by the time he died. All of his estate, including most of his enslaved, was sold by his daughter Martha to repay his debts. Sally was withheld from auction and freed by Jefferson's daughter Martha, Sally's niece. Sally lived in Virginia with her two youngest sons for the next 9 years until her death. In 1821, Jefferson wrote in his autobiography that he felt slavery would surely come to an end, but he felt that there was no hope for racial equality in America. Jefferson wrote in his autobiography that he felt slavery would surely come to an end, but he felt that there was no hope for racial equality in America. He stated, "Nothing is more certainly written in the book of fate than that these people are to be free. Nor is it less certain that the two races, equally free, cannot live in the same government. Nature, habit, opinion has drawn indelible lines of distinction between them." Jefferson believed that colonization was the practical alternative, and that freed blacks living in a white American society would lead to a race war. Was Jefferson right? Subscribe.